Welcome to my channel. I want to talk about what it was like to be an infantryman in Vietnam. But before I do that, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming to my channel and watching my videos. I want to thank all of you that have subscribed to my channel. I'm amazed by the number that have. I want to thank each of you that has liked my videos, commented on my videos, or shared my videos. Thanks to each and every one of you. I really do appreciate it. I have been a member of the Vietnam Veterans for Factual History for some time now. I'm a founding member. This is our website, and I'll put a link in the description so you can go look at it if you want to. And it says in part on our homepage, as veterans, many of whom served in the conflict and have remained very conscious of its history, we have become concerned that the 1978 prediction of Gunter Louis has proven to be all too accurate. 35 years ago, he wrote, "Mythology, half-truth, and falsehood concerning events in Vietnam abound, and unless corrected, will enter the textbooks for the miseducation of our children." That is absolutely true. Most people who have been educated about the Vietnam War have been told lies, have been told falsehoods, have been told myths, have been told things that are not true. And we are working hard to correct the record. We publish books, we attend seminars and speak at them. We write editorials in the newspapers. We do a lot of work to try and correct the record. One of the things that we do is we have a discussion board where we can mail list that we can talk about things. And we talk about the war and issues regarding the war, articles that are written about the war. Excuse me. And we also just have conversations about current events and other things too. But the bulk of the conversation on our mailing list is about the war. So the other day on the list, somebody posted a link to this, he calls it a podcast, by John Podlaski. John is an author. He wrote the book Cherries, a Vietnam War novel, which has been apparently quite popular. And I'll put a link to the Amazon link there and also to his podcast. But in his podcast, he talks about some of the practical aspects of being what he calls a grunt, humping in the boonies of Vietnam. I'm just going to play a little bit of it, and then you can watch the rest of it by yourself if you want to.
Vietnam veteran, the administrator of Cherry's website, and an acclaimed author of 4 award-winning books. Today I want to give everybody an idea of what it was like for an Army infantry soldier to hump the boonies during the Vietnam War. I'm not going to include mechanized units or SEALs, Special Forces, LRPs, Recon Rangers, or any similar groups because of their special operations. So, thanks for joining. Let's get started. This presentation should answer these 4 questions. What was it like for these young grunts to hunt through the countryside while carrying a rucksack and other supplies weighing almost as much as they did? What'd they carry in a bush? Was it more difficult to hunt in one area of the country versus another? Did it get any easier over time? Everything you see and hear in this presentation is from my perspective. However, much of it will likely ring true for those of you who humped the bush with me. Most of us never had a permanent home, so anything personal that we wanted to keep had to be carried with us on our missions. Most everything else that was ours was stuffed into a duffel bag and stored in the supply room at the unit's base camp. Things like civilian clothes for R&R, electronic equipment, suitcase, other personal items. In my case, Cu Chi was my base camp in the south and Phu Bai in the north. Those items that mattered were lugged inside of a metal ammo can under our rucksack. Letters from home, writing paper and pens, wallet, money, camera, toilet paper, pictures, paperback books, magazines, and diaries were just some examples of what we wanted nearby and protected from the elements. Our rucksack and ammo can were secured to a curved aluminum frame with quick release shoulder straps and a wide strap extending across the bottom, which rested against the small of our backs. If you look at the picture, you can spot the top of the frame above the shoulder. Everyone carried a green towel draped across their shoulders. It collected sweat dripping from our heads and necks and was used to wipe salty sweat from our stinging eyes. It also made for a good cushion under the straps of our ruck frame.
So that gives you a taste of what it's like. He talks about the practical, everyday things that were going on, and what it was like to go through the bush in Vietnam, lugging 90 pounds worth of stuff that you needed to survive, and ammunition, and all the other things that you need for war. But we got into a discussion about this on our mailing list. And I've asked permission from the guys to post this publicly, and they've all said that was fine. They didn't have a problem with it. So I wanted to share this with you because it's an insight into part of the war that many people are not aware of. It's probably not talked about a whole lot. But, you know, if you think about it, when you go to war, yes, you fight in combat, but you also have to deal with the issues of everyday life: shaving, brushing your teeth, bathing, trying to stay healthy, and a lot of other things. And there's a lot of things that you find out when you get there that you were not aware of that may be eye-openers for you. So one of the guys wrote, for a description of what humping was like, this is as good as anything I've ever read. It does, of course, leave out the exhilaration and panic of combat, but as the man said, that is a story for another time. Could have used pictures of a 12-foot king cobra, a tiger, or one of those foot-long centipedes with poisonous pincers that always made me think of a lobster with about 20 skinny legs on each side. Also missing was the mention of the bond that develops between grunts and the tragedy felt when we lost one or more of our buddies. I agree with Roger. This is the best short description of the infantry in Vietnam that I've read. And I agree that the things Roger mentions that were left out of the article are also spot on. The life of an infantryman in Vietnam was never easy, even when there was no contact with the enemy. I lost 22 pounds during the 6 months I commanded a Marine rifle company, and I was ravaged by malaria, prickly heat, and running skin sores after spending 51 straight days in the bush without the benefit of hot chow or a shower. Imagine that, 51 days out in the bush, no showers, no running water. You would be miserable. And then add into that contact with the enemy, and it makes for an experience that you'll never forget. Here's another one. While I was on an OP on Hill 462, south of the An Hoa combat base, I saw one of those foot-long centipedes that had killed one of the many rats infesting that hill as it dragged that rat into a hole to consume it at its leisure. Imagine that, a centipede big enough to kill and eat a rat. We also killed one using massive amounts of insect repellent. It took 2 entire bottles and nearly an hour before it stopped moving. I'm thankful that I was never bitten by one. I remember the first time I saw one of those centipedes and thought how beautiful it was with the scarlet body and the red legs rippling as it moved. I wish now I had taken a picture of one. One night a sergeant got stung in the side of his neck by one. In the morning they had to medevac him. His neck was swollen on that side like a grapefruit, forcing his head to turn all the way to the other side. Next time I saw one, I got a grunt to smash it with a rifle butt. But it kept moving, so I stabbed right through it with the old M1 bayonet I had and cut it in half. It was still moving, so we pushed both halves into a nearby small hole in the dirt and packed dirt over it and rammed it down with our boots. Why take any chances? Can you imagine? I mean, these are things that you won't hear about outside of combat vets talking about what it was like. Also missing was the revolting sight of swollen black leeches hanging from my armpits and crotch at the end of the day when I dropped my pants and took off my shirt, and the bloody splotches on my skin where other leeches filled with my blood had burst. I used insect repellent to get them off rather than pulling them off and leaving the head to infect my skin. I mean, this is the kind of things you don't see this in the movies. You don't hear about this when people talk about war. From my journal of 23 January 1970, included in my book, The Only Way We Had. The Only War We Had. We heard strange noises from a pile of dead tree limbs. Closer inspection revealed a foot-long, orange and green, fat-bodied lizard in a fight with a brown centipede almost as large. The lizard was faster and had strong jaws, but the centipede's jointed shell was too hard to be penetrated. For 2 hours, the creatures, both the largest of their species I had ever seen, fought through the brush. Several of the troops made bets on the final outcome of the battle, with the lizard the apparent favorite. No one had to pay off, for the fight ended, like most conflicts in Vietnam, with no winner. The lizard finally managed to swallow the head and about a third of the centipede's body. At that point, the centipede's spiny legs became stuck in the lizard's throat, and after another half-hour thrashing, the struggle killed them both. Also, you might want to mention the P-38 can opener. I recall many arguments among the troops on whether the Speaker or Shelby brand was the best. And finally, only nature meets man stories I have were not as intense as most and mostly comic. On a PSYOP ground mission near VC Base Area 470 in the upper Mekong, we came under fire from a small hamlet we were approaching and took cover in a wadable canal. Doing so, I saw a strange fish-like creature crawl out of the water and walk towards the VC fire. I thought it was just a fish that got thrown out by our thrashing around taking cover, but the fish kept on crawling. I learned later it was a walking fish that could travel short distances on dry land. Second story. I was on a PSYOP nightcap in a district village around 2200 hours when we took VC mortar fire. First round went long over my head as I was walking through the village market area. I went to ground waiting for the follow-on rounds. Excuse me. Hearing no more mortars, I sprinted to our truck park. I didn't hear the next round that landed in my front. As the round exploded, I felt something hit me square in the forehead. I immediately went prone, grabbing my head. I felt what seemed to be my skull bone and brain matter squishing between my fingers. Thinking I was hit with shrapnel, probably mortally, I got up and raced to the trucks where I could get first aid from some U.S. artillery medics. A medic inspected me with a flashlight and said, "That's the ugliest bug I've ever seen." Apparently, simultaneous to the mortar fire, I got hit by a Vietnamese flying beetle. They are huge, the size of small baseballs or large walnuts with a very hard shell. I smooshed the bug to my head. Its innards ran down my face. What a dope is all I can say. A couple of Vietnamese civilians were wounded that night. These are the kind of memories that men have when they serve in combat. Some of them are hilarious, some of them are disgusting, some of them are frightening, and some of them are horrifying. But those are the memories that they have. Those are the things that stand out in their minds and they think about. I hope sharing this with you has given you a little bit of insight into what it's like to go to war. It's a lot more than what people think. It's not just shooting. It's not just explosions. It's not just fighting. It's fighting to survive on a daily basis. Trying to live when you can't take a bath and you can't shave and you can't brush your teeth and you're covered in leeches. Trying to walk when you're hauling around almost as much weight as you are. Some of these men, when they came home, weighed 115, 120 pounds. That's how much weight they lost humping through the boonies in Vietnam. I have great respect for these men. They served in an arena that was extremely difficult to fight in, extremely difficult just to live in, and they did it honorably. And they came home and were ridiculed and derided and spit upon. It's sickening. I wish the American people would make up their minds. Do they want us to go to war or not? If they don't want us to go to war, then stop sending us to war. I guarantee you there's not a combat veteran alive who thinks war is a good thing. Not a single one. As always, I hope that all of my viewers will live abundant lives, will be healthy and live a long time, and that God will keep them safe from harm. And I pray that God will do the same for every single person that they love. And I pray that they will be anxious for nothing, but in all things through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, they'll let their requests be made known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep their hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet out.